Questions log, week 29, Thanksgiving. Vaguely aware at this point of developments in Luthor's metagene conspiracy. A year ago, he'd have captured my full interest, but I can see the doors closing and the lights going out. Steele has this one covered. For maybe the first time, I feel alright leaving some questions to the next generation of heroes. I only have enough left in me to ask one or two more. Better make them count. This is 52 Pickup.
Hello! Welcome to 52 Pickup, the greatest podcast about the best comic you've never heard of. I think I added an adjective in there that's not normally in there, but it is the greatest podcast about 52 comics. I am Gita Jackson. I'm a journalist and critic, and I'm co-founder of Aftermath.site, and I'm joined by professional comic books expert Alex Jaffe.
That's me, professional comic book expert Alex Jaffe. I'm sure that somebody's made a podcast about 52 before.
Ours is better, though. Ours is better.
Ours is, I think, probably the only one where we've had 3 out of the 4 writers on it.
Grant Morrison, where are you? I am putting out an APB on Grant Morrison. Where are you? We need to talk to you.
The writers of Countdown, the follow-up to 52, were all asking the same thing that entire year.
This comes up surprisingly frequently in our text message conversation.
Yeah. One of the mysteries that we try to address throughout our coverage of this maxi series that came out in 2006 and was published weekly for a year and somehow worked the whole time is why hasn't any subsequent attempt to do the same worked to the same degree?
Yeah.
And we've determined that a big part of that was Stephen Wacker, the editor that Marvel poached in the middle. But the reason that the immediate follow-up to 52, Countdown to Final Crisis, which we might get into in greater depth in a bonus episode or something, you can find a trove of great bonus episodes by subscribing to Aftermath.site at your leisure.
A few weeks ago, if you're listening to this, a really good one came out. By the way. Like a really good one. So,
oh man, yeah.
Like just check out our bonus episodes. We talked to Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, and Greg Rucka. The Rucka conversation was truly incredible.
We got to have him back.
We got to get Rucka back. Rucka,
anyway,
we love you.
The thing with the follow-up to 52, Countdown, which was quite brilliantly, the scheme was we're going to count down from 52 back to 0, and it's going to lead up to the big event that Grant Morrison, one of the writers of 52, is going to write themselves and just do the biggest story we've ever told in comics. And we're going to call it Final Crisis because it's the last DC Comics story. And we're going to spend a year building up to it. And we're going to get all these great writers on it. We're going to get Paul Dini from Batman the Animated Series to run the whole thing. So Grant, tell us what's going to happen and we'll do whatever we can to ramp up to it. And Grant's like, nope, not going to tell you.
How much of it do you think they actually knew was going to occur in the book? Because if you read Final Crisis, you're also maybe like, what happened? you know what I mean?
I've read Final Crisis a few times, and I think I get like 40% of it.
It is mostly a psychedelic tone poem. And I don't say that. I say that as someone who enjoyed the process of reading it, like likes it as a project. Is it the Final Crisis? Well, in many ways, yes. And that no one's going to do them like that ever again. But it does have the
except for the Multiversity, which did do it like that again in 2015.
Oh my God, yes. Comic books.
Comic books.
Listen, I read so much manga these days because I have the Shonen Jump app, and it's really easy to read manga in bed. And you really see why manga is just absolutely crushing the American comic books industry. Just like rewind and re-listen to that previous conversation like 10 seconds ago.
Yeah.
And you'll be like, I'll just read Dragon Ball Z. Like it's so much easier.
Yeah, you can get into the Our Worlds at War storyline where all of the superheroes are fighting against this guy named Imperiex, and you kind of have to wind through the President Lex Luthor storyline and figure out what's going on in all these 40 comics being published at once. Or you can just pick up every sequential volume of Comey Can't Communicate, which I've been doing lately, and I've been loving the hell out of.
Is it cute?
Oh, Comey Can't Communicate, it's great.
Okay. I'm going to add that to the rotation. And another thing is the weekly schedule is obviously a problem if you are a manga worker, in that it will literally kill you.
Yeah.
But if you're a reader, you're like, oh boy, more comics. Whereas I've lost track of so many series because I have ADHD and things come out on a monthly schedule.
Yeah. I have spreadsheets.
Yeah, I mean, I should probably do that too. I should probably have calendar alerts because I've been meaning to read Jamie McKelvey's new book, and I just keep forgetting to go to the comic book store. And I'm sure the number one is completely sold out at this point. I'd rather have a physical than a digital for the first couple issues at least. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We are here to talk about 52.
Man, comics. 52.
I could talk about them forever. Like the labor problems in comics, both the American industry and the Japanese industry are fascinating to me because even though they are two different, completely different industries in form, they have the same problems. And it's overwork, underpay.
Yeah, that's just creative work as a whole.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks a lot.
It's pretty awful.
Yeah.
But you know what's not awful?
52.
This book.
This book rocks. This was a great issue I really liked.
This is a real Jeff Johns ass of an issue.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Johns, one of his major things, other than sequelizing Alan Moore works he likes and trying to platform Arab characters to mixed success, is being really, really obsessed with the legacy of Golden Age superheroes. And he kind of made his bones working on Stargirl and JSA. This is him finally getting to acknowledge his favorite group of guys within the context of 52, because this happens to be the Thanksgiving issue. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
This was, it's strong work. It's just strong and confident work. And you can see it's like a writer playing with a bunch of their favorite toys and ideas. Mm-hmm. And that's always satisfying to read in comics, especially when you get a writer that is very knowledgeable about the set of characters that they're working on. And also on top of that, likes all of the problems that they have. It's even if you're not familiar with them, you feel like you run into a very cozy rerun of a good old TV show. David and I started watching the non-Myth Arc episodes of X-Files, which for my money are better than the Myth Arc episodes of X-Files.
Oh,
frankly. Yeah. And it's just cozy. You don't even have to know what's going on in season 6 of X-Files to sink into one of the HOA, the Homeowners Association monster episode. It's just a fun watch. You can just watch it anytime. And this issue felt the same. This is a snapshot of all these characters and where they are in their lives during this era of the DC universe. And I don't exactly know every single bit and piece of that, but I do feel like everything is contextualized for me and it feels very cozy to read. Like something you'd read over Thanksgiving.
The tragedy of the Bare Naked Ladies is that as they were watching the X-Files with no lights on, they were hoping for the Smoking Man to be in this one, when it was the episodes without the Smoking Man that would hold up for generations to come. They didn't realize what they had while they had it.
Yeah, that is the tragedy of the Bare Naked Ladies. I hope they find some clothes. I'm just kidding. I couldn't stop myself from saying that one.
Let's talk talent. We got Chris Batista back on pencils. We last saw him on issue 20. God is fragged. The great inking debacle seems to be handled by now with Jack Jadson working solo, but there's still some editorial shakiness post-Whacker abduction, evidenced by the fact that there's no backup in this issue.
Yeah, I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was hoping for one.
Yeah.
But I guess
didn't happen on time. It'll be back next week.
Comics.
Yeah. We get a little teaser on the cover of 39 Days Till the Rain. Right now, during the marketing cycle of 52, there was this event being teased that was coming up that they were calling The Reign of the Supermen, RAIN, as a play on The Reign of the Supermen, REIGN, from the Death of Superman arc. And they're kind of being coy about what that is. And it's gonna be a big deal. We're not there yet. We got a little bit on the ticker that says egg foo, food or menace. A little Marvel joke, I guess. And we see the big three of the JSA, Alan Scott, Jay Garrick, and Ted Grant Wildcat, just kind of sadly walking towards an open, misty door. Very minimal cover from J.G. Jones' overall work, which is, I think, supposed to evoke the sparseness of like, hey, where'd everybody go? Because Thanksgiving is traditionally a time, especially during Jeff Johns' run, establishing that like this is the point that all of the heroes in the DC universe kind of come together as a community, as opposed to like solving an emergency and just kind of like bond with each other and take a moment to take a breather together and acknowledge all they've been through and all they're grateful for with each other. But this Thanksgiving, basically every major hero is off the table, and it's a sad occasion considering just everything else that's going on in this world that Lex Luthor is taking charge of, which we'll get into shortly.
Yeah, the JSA, as compared to the JLA, the Justice League, has always felt to me like a nice little mom and pop shop.
Yeah.
You know, like it has a hominess to it. Like these people have worked together and known each other from their youth into their old age. And here you do get, it is the cover and then the first page are very evocative of it. What I kept thinking of for some reason was No Country for Old Men. You know, that's the story that the sheriff tells right at the end of the movie, where he realizes just how out of his depth he is in the present. It's less cynical, I would say, than No Country for Old Men, but the vibes are there.
Yeah. I mean, it's right in the name. Justice League is like a team, and a Justice Society is like a community.
Yeah. Yeah. And they treat each other like a community. What people like about the JSA is that they treat each other like family, whereas the Justice League treats each other like coworkers that don't always get along, which is a different kind of drama.
We get the last 3 active members of the JSA during all this madness gather around this table, reflecting on everybody that's dead. Alan Scott's daughter, Jade, died in the Ranthanagar War, which was part of the lead up to Infinite Crisis, kind of that big Zeta Beam massacre we saw a while ago is the fallout from that. And right outside their window is basically the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, brought to you by Lex Luthor.
But instead of Luffy and Goku, it's the most horrible thing you could possibly imagine. A big balloon of Lex Luthor.
Yeah. And there's Infinity Inc. in tow, which is especially insulting considering the original Infinity Inc. were all just like the heirs of the Justice Society. And here they are running around using the names of their children and proteges. We see a new Nuklon. We see a new Jade, which is very upsetting to Alan Scott. Like, my daughter died 6 months ago. What are you doing?
Yeah, and they make some comments about like property, like IP rights, which feels very like now feels like more relevant than ever now that the extended universes of these companies have become so lucrative, but also out of the hands of the people that created these characters and these stories, where it's just like, well, there's nothing the JSA's conclusion is there's nothing we really can do about them using these names. It's a legal matter, and legally they are in the right. We just have to we have to watch it and feel ashamed.
There is a stealth meta joke to that effect in this scene where you'll notice one of the balloons in the parade is this kind of like this panda wearing suspenders. And in the notes for this issue, apparently in the original art, Keith Giffen drew that as a Spider-Man balloon. And like a thing Keith Giffen would keep doing in the breakdowns for this series is draw Marvel characters into these crowd scenes just to see if the artists would catch it and like just make sure they were paying attention.
That's really, really, really funny.
So right in the middle of this whole conversation about who owns the rights to these characters, there's Spider-Man in this DC comic.
I just let him cook.
Yeah.
You know, he was making points. He didn't know the points he was making at the time, but now we all know. God. So obviously after Jade is announced, which has some very funny, like, your one friend who's too woke moment with her, where she's like, say yes to plants, say no to eating meat. She's named Jade because she has plant related powers. Obsidian, who is Alan Scott's other child, his son, who has had some mental health problems in the past, gets super fucking mad because that's literally his sister. That's this woman just carrying around his sister's legacy with absolutely no care for her at all.
Working for Lex Luthor.
Working for the Lex, like, it's like if your best, like, you saw someone, your sibling disappeared or died, and then you saw someone immediately take their job and say, and I'm gonna go work for Elon Musk. It's fucked. It just feels fucked. And this is like such an element of how unfair it is to be an adult. There is no mature or rational response to this. In a just world, he would just get to punch Lex Luthor's head off. But here we are. Yeah.
And Nucleon, who is an extremely 80s character. That whole look with like the mohawk is just taken right out of the original Infinity Inc. comic. And he's like, hey, I call myself Nucleon despite the fact that the original Nucleon defected from America and joined Black Adam. So let's take it easy when we talk about legacy here. And I don't know if that's a good argument, man.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Like, it gives some perspective to the idea of like what makes DC interesting, which is the idea of legacy, that there are characters who do actually care about how the world progresses, and they put that into a mentee, they put that into their children. And that is like what makes this universe feel like time has passed and time is moving, and also become so complex and interwoven, where you get to see what it actually feels like for these characters to see their legacies be disrespected. We usually get the context of seeing, like, in the Bat family, you know, we get to see the legacy of Batman birth new kinds of characters. We've both been reading like a fuck ton of Batman Wayne Family Adventures. Yeah. Because it's so sweet. I read like 2 issues of it, like when right before I go to bed, and it makes me so happy. But even in there, you see that the idea of legacy is all about reinforcing the things that are inspiring and good about Batman. And here we see how legacy works in a corporate world, and putting that in contrast to the homespun like niceness of the JSA. This is how legacy works in the corporate world. It's up for grabs. Anyone can take your name if they have the most amount of money, and Lex Luthor has all of the money.
Yeah. But it wouldn't be a Thanksgiving issue if we didn't have a Thanksgiving table scene. And here we get maybe one of the best scenes in this entire series.
This is so good. It's so good. This one's so good. And
this is like the scene I think about when I think about this arc.
Oh my God. I mean, so full page splash of the Thanksgiving table itself. There is a giant turkey-like object on a big old train track, and it's being hacked away at with a chainsaw.
Oh, this is a mutant turkey with 6 legs on each side. And we're here on Oolong Island, and Dr. Sivana, Captain Marvel's arch nemesis, is just carving this shit up while a table of mad scientists and their possibly robot escorts just kind of attend this meal around the table. Just chunks of meat spattering in everyone's faces as everybody laughs. It's T.O. Morrow dubs it the Taro turkey because it's apparently some kind of pterodactyl turkey hybrid that they're having for dinner. It serves as a great contrast to the very sad Thanksgiving dinner that Sivana's ex-wife was having with the Black Adam family a couple issues ago, where she had them all sit down to a meal that she paid $20 million a plate for them to sit down at. Yeah. We get this delightful contrast here. Will Magnus is kind of disgusted at this display. He's had enough already. He's not happy to be on this island anymore. He just wants to go home. He very clearly steals a man's gold watch because he's a guy who makes robots out of metals. And Veronica Cale follows him out and just starts climbing all over him.
Veronica Cale. Oh, what a character. What a character, I gotta say.
Like Jenna Maroney in 30 Rock going, I'll use my sexuality.
That's exactly who she's like. It's just like if you plopped Jenna Maroney, like the most selfish, horniest, evil character you could possibly imagine. Yeah. I absolutely love it. I love the dynamic she brings to this because she is like a real parody of like an evil, crazy woman.
Yeah.
But it's done so gleefully and she has absolutely no shame about it that it's just enjoyable. It doesn't feel like it feels like it knows the writing here, it's in on the joke and it wants you to be in on the joke too, which is that of course this is the woman that would end up at the evil mad scientist island. The evil sexy lady is the evil mad scientist.
I will say, we all know Oolong Island is the Grant Morrison plot in this book. And Grant Morrison's track record with writing women like this, when you kind of create a timeline of everything they've done, this isn't an isolated incident.
Yeah, let's not talk about Jezebel Jet. Like the way that this is a character archetype they clearly have a lot of fun with. Like Emma Frost is a take on this, the evil sexy lady, in that it gives their work on New X-Men just gave Emma Frost a lot of humanity on top of her being this person that just dresses like a female rapper, essentially. Yeah. Emma Frost. Megan should probably do Emma Frost as a Halloween costume at some point. I think she'd do a great job.
Yeah.
Right? The Starfire was so fucking incredible.
Oh, that Starfire was so good.
It was really amazing. Like that to me, that's the end goal of being rich and famous is getting somebody to do really expensive, cool Halloween costumes for me.
Yeah.
That would be so great. But sometimes Morrison's portrayals of the evil sexy lady are less flattering and less funny than this one, or Emma Frost. Jezebel Jet and the way that they write Talia al Ghul is just like reprehensible. I hate it. I really hate it.
It really makes my skin crawl. And like, I mean, when James Gunn announced that like my model for the Batman movie is gonna be Grant Morrison's Batman run, I was like, please don't put Talia in it. Please don't put Talia in this movie.
Like, it's a tricky enough thing to try to put the League of Shadows in a Batman movie in 2024 and beyond on its own. And then you add to that the way that Arab women are treated in American media, and on top of that, the source material. And it's like, don't tie yourself into knots over this. Like, you can just not do it.
I think one of the greatest real world arc in the history of DC Comics is Denny O'Neil's relationship with the League of Assassins as he originally invented them, and the way he would treat them through the 90s when he did his last writing, where like they started as like very clearly an XP for a James Bond evil organization. And as he spent more time with them, he's like, you know, there's a lot of nuance here that probably warrants being explored. And that really reaches ahead with the excellent Birth of the Demon graphic novel.
You've mentioned this one on the show before. I gotta finally read it. I finally have a DC Universe Unlimited subscription.
Anyway, Veronica's just climbing all over Will, pumping him for information. Make some veiled comments about the relationship between Intergang and Apocalypse dating back to the 70s Kirby stuff. There's some kind of dark side to all this. SEID, not SIDE. And she's just kind of climbing all over him and rats him out. And they go back to the dinner table. And who should show up but Egg Foo?
Egg Foo, who is so mad he wasn't invited to Thanksgiving.
And so mad that people are calling him Egg Foo.
Yeah.
Which just like the whole time I was thinking about that scene from Monty Python's Life of Brian with the Roman who's like, do you find something amusing about the name Biggus Dickus? And everyone just trying not to laugh. One thing about this comic is that they clearly invented a different name for him, Chang Tzu, but they can't keep it straight what it's supposed to be. And like kind of from page to page, it changes to like Chung Tzu or whatever.
That's, oh man, really respecting Asian Americans.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we just need some other name. And Egg Foo vaporizes a dude for laughing at him. And that's when Veronica Cale rats out Will Magnus for taking medication to treat his bipolar disorder.
Oh my God, I relate to this so much.
Yeah.
It is like his being dragged off by the guards and saying they'll make me insane is just a feeling I've had in the corporate world so frequently. It's like, you want me to do what? How many times? And for how many hours? You understand I will have a mental fucking breakdown if I do this. But no one understands ever. They just want you to make a robot that kills people.
Yeah. Tio corroborates this, and he just kind of sits by drinking wine while his best friend gets carted off to lose his entire mind. And Savannah's just like, hey, I thought you were losing your touch, man. Turns out you're still evil. Way to go.
Yeah, I love that line. That was the funniest line in the issue for me, where it's like they know they've done something evil. That's the point. They're evil scientists.
We're evil. Oh, man. We get one more scene with the Justice Society, just kind of sad men sitting around. And that takes us to a teaser at Steelworks. Last time we visited the Steel plot, he was working with Beast Boy, who was like, hey, something is up with this whole Luthor thing. We got to look into it. And the big development here is that steel alloy that's been coating John's skin has been peeling off. And apparently these powers that Luthor has given everybody has an expiration date.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
This development is interesting.
And next issue, we're going to check in with the Bat family, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, we see Nightwing prominently displayed here, which it'll be interesting. Just also because, I mean, okay, here's the thing I think of every time Nightwing shows up in any media ever, is how much Dan DiDio wanted that man to die.
Yeah.
You know? So seeing him in the preview.
Dan DiDio demands Dick to die. Dan DiDio demands Dick to die. Dan DiDio demanded Dick to die.
Dan DiDio declares death of Dick.
Dick death determined via Dan DiDio.
Dick death was the next place to go with that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you have Dick death.
Seeing Dick alive, not Dick dead, and the follow-up essentially to what is Infinite Crisis, that's a real statement of intent. But I think basically every single author at DC rebelled against the idea of Dick dying. I just don't understand why you'd want that to occur. Dick is great.
There was the idea that Dick is kind of a diet Batman, and having him around is superfluous. Like Nightwing doesn't really do much that Batman doesn't do. I think part of the reason that Tom Taylor's recent Nightwing run won so many awards was it did a lot to present the fact that like Dick is a different guy than Batman is and can do a lot more things than Batman can. He's a much more sociable person as a hero, and within his personal life, he's a more inspirational figure. He's kind of the halfway point between Batman and Superman, which goes back to like his pedigree with the world's finest, going back to 1940. People think that team was Batman and Superman, but as Mark Waid has been showing us in the great World's Finest comic that's been going on for like 30 months now, it was always Bruce and Clark and Dick. It was always a trio.
Yeah. Here's the thing also, even if he doesn't do much, even if there's no ongoing book, right? Dick serves a story purpose.
Yeah.
Dick is proof of concept that Batman works.
Yes.
Essentially.
That there is a legacy to this, that he's it's not just going to die with him.
Yeah. Like there's also like that Bruce as a character is getting better as a person. Mm-hmm. Dick is proof of that, because Dick is essentially mentally healthy Batman. Like so that's the reason why they're so similar as characters but there is this one extreme difference, which is Dick found healthy coping mechanisms for his PTSD outside of superhero-dom. Mm-hmm. Bruce is trapped in it, and he'll always be to some degree trapped in it. But Dick is breaking the cycle of generational trauma. And that's like important for Batman as a character.
It really is.
Otherwise, you just end up telling the same Batman stories over and over again. You need to show that this character progresses and how they progress. So killing Dick just means that you have decided Batman can never grow or change.
Right. And, you know, where do you fall on, like, I hear a lot of discourse over the fact that, like, Batman is not allowed to have a Robin in movies. Like, we never really see him hanging out with a Robin.
Doesn't make any fucking sense to me. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, the latest Batman movie, The Batman with Robert Pattinson, you see him striving for the kind of relationship with a young person that he would have with Robin.
Right.
If, dollars to donuts, a phrase that no longer makes any sense because donuts are now more expensive than $1. I would say it's clearly a setup for the introduction of a Robin-like character. Obviously, the previous Batman movies have made executives scared of introducing a sidekick. But that had nothing to do with Robin as a character and everything to do with the tone of those films themselves. It isn't that having a little boy fight crime is bad. You can age him up to be 16. I don't give a fuck. Like, it's fine. He needs to have this idea of, I lost my father, now I will become the father I wanted to have.
Right. It's an essential part of Batman. It's been part of his story since a year after he was created. He's existed far longer with a Robin than without one. The myth of the solo Batman barely ever existed.
Yeah, it's basically at this point a movie-only view of the character. Yeah, and those movies are great, but I really like that, at least in The Batman, we know that we're portraying a really young Bruce. So at least the possibility is open. With the Christian Bale, Chris Nolan at Batman, it was like, it felt weird. I mean, we're hot take, super out of character Bruce Wayne and Batman in those movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that's a different character. That's not Bruce. That's a different guy. Those movies are enjoyable as their own things, mostly as exercises and practical effects. Mm-hmm. But that's not my Batman. My Batman recognizes that he has to recover from his trauma somehow, or at least save young people from experiencing what he experienced. Tim
Burton was very proud of the fact that he had never read a Batman comic. Like, he would brag about it.
He's like an art school guy, so I can see why, right? Like, he was a fine arts person who was proudly an illustrator and not a comic artist.
Yeah.
Even though if you look at his illustrations, they just look like indie comics.
Yeah, I love that Batman duology for its own reasons, and Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman was the hottest thing to ever be in a Batman thing until this year, which we may talk about in a future episode.
No, absolutely 100% real. Like, the one time heterosexuality in any manner entered into these superhero films, it's Michelle Pfeiffer just absolutely destroying as Catwoman.
God.
Again, like a Catwoman that's very different from the comics, but she understands why Catwoman is cool at the very least. So you get the same feeling of slinkiness and just like devil may care type attitude that was not matched in a Catwoman portrayal until the most recent one in The Batman again with Zoe Kravitz.
Oh, God. Yeah. Man, I love that Batman movie.
It's really good. Danny DeVito as the Penguin. I'm sorry. I meant to say Penguin, but I have started calling, whenever David and I watch The Penguin, I've started just shouting, Pengy.
Yeah. Well, that is what Burgess Meredith's Penguin went by in the 60s Batman TV show. People called him Pengy.
The Pengy.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah.
I don't have enough time to say the Penguin. It's the Pengy. Can we watch the Pengy, David, please?
Yeah. His when he ran for mayor in the Adam West TV show, his campaign slogan was "Everyone loves Pengy."
But it's true. Everyone does love Pengy.
What was your favorite scene this issue?
Oh, it's the Thanksgiving dinner scene.
Yeah.
But it's
just all of it.
All of it, specifically when the most evil part right at the end where they reveal that he's still taking medication for bipolar disorder. It's just like, that is like a mentally healthy, mentally ill person's worst fucking nightmare. And it's played very satisfyingly as like an act of evil by evil mad scientists. I just enjoy all of the dimensions of it, and it's extremely funny.
Yeah. For me, it's that turkey scene just because it's so evocative of just the zany evil of that whole, like the elevated mad science of that entire arc.
Yes, yes.
Where Grant Morrison has this famous quote about how Superman and just like in extension superhero comics as a whole are about mundane experiences elevated to epic levels. And this is a Thanksgiving dinner, except it's a pterodactyl turkey being carved on a mobile trade station with a chainsaw. Yeah, it's like this is the manifesto, and like how supervillains have Thanksgiving dinner. And I love it. I love it so much.
It's just very silly, but gleefully so.
Yeah.
Every single space on the page, there is a lot of jokes in every single thing. So much overlapping dialogue. It gives you the feeling of being at a dinner. But then also it's you know that one Superman or Spider-Man panel that always gets passed around as a meme where he's like, what, you can edit DNA on the fly and you could use that to cure cancer. Why are you turning people into dinosaurs? And he's like, but I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs.
That panel, by the way, was written by Elliot Kalin, who is the current writer of Harley Quinn. Series I'm really enjoying right now.
Hell fucking yeah. You know, I bought that when we were at Forbidden Planet, so I'm excited to finally get a chance to read it.
Oh God, when I went to Forbidden Planet with Gita, hand to God.
What a story.
Oh my God. I was like, there was this super rare question figure from like the Platinum collection that Todd McFarlane puts out, where like usually the Platinum figures in the past were like rare color variants of other figures. But this year they decided, we're just going to put out whole ass figures you can only get in this Platinum line, which are going to be in like 1 in 5,000 boxes or whatever. And we're going to ship them off to random shops. And I had just like totally despaired of any chance of getting this thing. And like I sent out feelers within DC. I tried to talk to people who like worked at McFarlane. Nobody could get me this thing. And Gita and I are just hanging out because every few months or so, we like to go to a bookstore and walk down the aisles and yell about a comic on every shelf.
It's fun. Highly recommend that you do this activity with your comic book enjoying friends. It's just a fun thing to do.
And Gita's picking up the new releases. And what should I see in the glass case but the last question action figure that I am missing from my complete question collection?
I heard you cry out. I was like, Alex.
I literally gasped.
You did.
I lost my breath. I couldn't believe it.
Miraculous moment of the guy being like, yeah, I'll get one for you. And then he comes back with a key and he's like, this is actually the last one. So we're going to give you the one in the case.
I was like, I was near crying. It was beautiful.
It's just beautiful. That's just a beautiful, beautiful
Gita,
moment.
you saw me on one of the best days of the year.
And I redeemed that Forbidden Planet for you because you had a bad experience there before.
Yeah.
So now you'll only remember.
Uncursed. Yeah.
It's uncursed now. You just needed to come one more time and I'd lift the curse for you.
I had to come with you. And
yeah, exactly.
That made all the difference.
Oh, man.
Do you have anything you'd like to put on the Blackboard?
The Blackboard? God, I mean, the most interesting thing that I would love to just hear more about, one is just the JSA office, but specifically this wall of just snapshots they have behind them on the first few pages. I'd love to see the scene where Stargirl and Starman took that picture together. I have such a soft spot for the Starman comic book, and it touched my heart to see him. He barely ever shows up, the acknowledgement of him being Starman, because he is such a definitive end. That comic book really ends and then nobody picks up the thread.
It's honestly really cool that he doesn't show up.
Yeah, it feels very respectful in a way that comic books are frequently not respectful of the creators and their intentions. But seeing just an acknowledgement that they miss him, I don't know. I'd love to just see the scene where they took that picture and hear about what other people think about it.
My Blackboard point ties into that a lot because I'd like to get into the origin of the JSA in how they first appeared in like All-Star Comics #3. The first occasion that the Justice Society met was not to fight some like great threat that they needed to butt heads on, but like just to have a dinner together. They all had this big turkey dinner around the table. They didn't say it was a Thanksgiving dinner, but it could have been a Thanksgiving dinner. And that's clearly something Jeff Johns jumped on in his run. And they're all just kind of gathered around the table talking about the cases they've been working on lately and stuff they're proud of. And just like using this rare moment of peace to kind of like trade war stories and talk about the kinds of things they all deal with, which was unheard of in comics at the time. This is really the first incident of like there being a shared universe at all. And in All-Star Comics, that kind of develops over time to like eventually they team up against common enemies. But usually what happens is there's a framing story and they all go in different directions to address one part of the story, then come back together at the end. And like, what's really interesting about that book is that you get to see the evolution of how team-up comics work. Like, they had no idea what they were supposed to even look like. Like, their model was like Action Comics and Detective Comics anthologies, where like you would have 10 or 11 stories of different characters doing their own thing. And the innovation of All-Star Comics was, well, what if there's a framing device where all of these guys are hanging out with each other? What if Superman and Zatara knew each other? And that's what developed into this like warm, welcoming family. And the fact that like there are these people who like don't just come together because they need to save the world. They come together because they're really the only people who understand what each other have been through. And that's the Justice Society, baby.
And that's the DNA of the whole DC extended universe, right?
That table.
Is that table the idea that all these people are in a partnership with each other, that once you become a superhero, you are agreeing to be part of a community of people that all have the same values.
Right.
And if you look at the history of comics, you see it's like just a big old game of yes and. And that is especially in DC. And it's so, so satisfying to watch artists and authors build off of each other's ideas, especially in these earlier stages. You know, if you look at the entire evolution of the line of the Crisis style of event comics, the ones that are specifically named Crisis, even in the ones that are bad, it's the idea of being someone to pick up a thread that was left by someone decades ago that makes comics an incredibly unique form in America, at least.
Yeah, it's kind of the thing that makes comics, Western comics, difficult in terms of accessibility. But it's the thing I love about them, that it's not one guy's thing. It's thousands of guys' things all building
thousands
on each
of guys for decades and decades. Like, we're coming up on 100 years of comics.
We really are. This started in 1935. It's 11 more years and we're there.
And it's like, it is something that you can only really achieve in comics too. Like, if you look at the MCU, it's an attempt, but they never made it work on TV. They had a good 10 years of the movies, but that is, the diminishing returns have arrived, you know? That's slowly slipping away from them. Comics are the form where you can tell a story, passing it along through generations, and there's not really any other form that does this as well.
I will say we are recording this on the week that the final episode of Superman and Lois aired on the
I was
CW.
hoping you'd mention this because I love this show.
The very last vestige of the Berlanti-verse that started with Arrow and kind of picked up a thematic torch from going back to Smallville, of this thing that started as, and continued to be, very much a soap opera, but modeled itself on kind of the iterative format of comics themselves, weaving in and out of each other and building on storylines, and ultimately culminating in their own very, very ambitious Crisis on Infinite Earths, which I don't know if you watched, but was really impressive considering they had zero budget.
Yeah, the CW frequently punches above its weight. I know that people have a negative perception of the CW and like UPN, WB, like its antecedents in history, but like that team working on the DC Comics stuff gave a fuck. They gave a huge amount of a fuck. And it is the closest you're seeing to the kinds of wild genre experimentation and long-term overlapping storytelling that, like, it's the closest approximation to what comic books work as possible. And I think the key is that they're all soap operas.
Yeah.
None of them are prestige shows.
Is the writing good? Frequently, no. But that's besides the point.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. It does not matter if the shows are good or not. Like that, like so many people read comics that are fucking dog shit.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Exactly.
Like it is thrilling storytelling that allows you to imagine things and to think about the meaning of what it means to be a good person in a way that a lot of other media doesn't specifically focus itself on. I think they're just a lot of fun. And if you're going to tell me you haven't watched a Gossip Girl episode and laughed, I'm going to call you a fucking liar.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the first season of Vampire Diaries very recently, and I had a good-ass time. It's not written well, but it's comic books.
Absolutely the fuck not. It is not written well.
No.
Vampire Diaries is awful, but did I watch that shit? Yes. You bet your ass I did.
I did something very funny, which was I watched the first half of season 1, and then I watched Interview with the Vampire, and then I went back to season 1.
That's so funny. Like, when you needed a little, like, wait, I need to use my brain for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't always be eating steak all the time, right? You cannot not have a filet mignon every day. Sometimes you're going to wake up and
or
think,
you turn into Jordan Peterson.
You get it addicted to benzos. Yeah. No, if you eat a filet mignon every day, someday you'll wake up and you think, I really want a fucking Pop-Tart. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you have to have the Pop-Tart because you're just craving it. Sometimes I do not want to think super hard while I'm watching television because I think super hard every day of my life.
Yeah.
Sometimes, though, I want to watch some stuff with substance. Frequently we have the Criterion streaming channel, and David and I will just pick things at random sometimes because it's very satisfying to also have art that moves you intellectually. But sometimes I just want to look at Tyler Hoechlin's incredibly pert butt in the Superman costume.
Yeah.
And honestly, the Lois in Superman and Lois is fantastic. She's so
great.
Good. She's hilarious, and I really appreciated the pilot just being all about how the Daily Planet is going out of business because of private equity.
That first season is so good.
It really is great.
Oh, man.
Just the idea of Lois Lane becoming the only writer at a small town newspaper is one of the better ideas about how to treat that character. It's fantastic.
I love that there are 2 employees at that entire paper. It's great.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay.
Man, I got to watch more of that. But yes, we have other podcasting business to attend to.
Yeah, it's time to ask the questions. This is the point where we take some questions from our mailbag at 52mailbag@gmail.com, where you can submit questions for Gita and I to address about comics, about superheroes, about media, about whatever you want to ask us about. We got 2 from Kurkanos from the Aftermath Discord this week. The first question, hello, huge fan of the show and a loyal read-along listener. Hellboy is one of my first great loves in comics. What in DC is closest to Hellboy that I should read? I've thought a lot about this. Do you have any first thoughts?
No, I want to hear your answer first and then think about what that triggers in my memory.
I think there are 2 ways to think about this. You could think about it from the BPRD aspect of like people investigating the weird supernatural side of DC Comics, or like the esoteric stuff that lurks in the corners. And for that, Chase by J.H. Williams III is a great underrated series that does that. Keith Giffen and the great Bilquis Evely did a miniseries in 2016 called Sugar and Spike, which was about these 2 legacy comedy characters from way back in the day, just grown up now and solving mysteries about like Superman and Green Lantern's most embarrassing cases from the Silver Age. That I think will tickle your Hellboy bone. But I think what you really want if you really love Hellboy is like a kind of moody but very sensible long-term character arc. And for that, you're going to need to go back to Starman, baby. That's Jack Knight all over. In fact, there is a Starman Hellboy crossover. Mike Mignola literally answered this question for you.
But if you're into the hell stuff, here's my suggestion. The first trade of Constantine.
Yeah.
The first trade of Constantine, boy, does that guy blaze through hell.
Original Sins, the Jamie Delano run. It holds up.
It really does. I think every time I revisit it, I like it a little bit more, too. It is an incredibly strong arc. It rips. And it does give me that sort of like, there's a world beyond my imagining, magic bullshit kind of feeling. But through the eyes of, and I think the Hellboy characters are just like, they are horrific monsters, but they're also normal people.
Yeah.
And it does have that same kind of tonal difference where John Constantine is just like your garden variety Londoner asshole, but it just happens that he's an incredibly powerful magician on top of that.
Yeah. He's not even incredibly powerful. He's just very clever and a big shit.
It is tonally, I think, very similar to Hellboy.
He's a guy you don't want to fuck with. And I think the Garth Ennis run holds up super, super well, having revisited it recently. Kind of some of his most enduring work. Yeah, that's a really good shout. Hellblazer is a good one to go to.
Hellblazer, it's a very long-running series, but some of the first arcs especially are really quite good. Yeah. And I think undersung, underpraised, underrated. That's the word I was looking for. They're underrated when you talk about comic books from the 80s just because we were in an era of an embarrassment of riches.
For this next one, I have a little bit of bad news. We're going to have to talk about video games.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Turn that part of your brain on. All right. Here's the question. What is the most interesting format or style or genre of video game to use for a Superman game? I think his abilities and general power scaling doesn't make it particularly interesting for it to be a straight-up action game of any kind. How do you really dig into the most interesting aspects of the character in a video game format?
Before I answer this seriously, I just had an incredibly funny thought. What if in an Arkham Asylum video game, you know how like in those games, Batman has detective vision?
Yeah.
What if in a Superman game, you just had journalism vision?
Not X-ray vision?
Yeah, it's like X-ray vision, but he'll turn on his journalism site sometimes and be like, that guy's probably fucking lying to me.
Like you get the LA Noire readout.
Yeah.
That would be good for a Lois Lane game.
That would be a Lois game. Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer this, but I think part of it is just you have to maybe not set it on Earth.
I think this question was already answered very elegantly in multiple games in the 2000s, both the Superman Returns video game and a really underrated Superman mobile game, where the idea is Superman is invincible, but Metropolis has a health bar.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. I really like that. Because Superman's motivation is to save people.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you can't be killed, then you have to use your immense power to prevent another secondary outcome.
Right.
That's really interesting. I also think maybe like a Telltale style visual novel would be a very good format to just
You ever play those Telltale Batmans?
I heard they're fucking great.
I love them.
I thought they're really good. And it makes sense for comics. And let's just elide the question of the power set entirely. Let's put you in the perspective of Superman, right? What would you do with his powers becomes the question of that game. Those are the verbs then, is empowering you. A lot of young people, of course, ask themselves what they do with Superman's powers. So why not answer that?
Yeah. It's all trolley problems, really.
Yeah. Upsetting ethical questions, the video game.
Exactly. I'm excited. Yeah. I'd
that
play
would
this
sell,
for sure.
though. I'd play that shit. Absolutely.
100%. Okay. I think that's everything. Kind of a breezy issue this week. We'll be back next week with the return of the Bat family.
I'm so excited.
We might have a special guest for that one, so stay tuned. And of course, subscribe to aftermath.site to get our thoughts on movies, comics, other special DC and even maybe non-DC related things. And keep those donations coming. We're talking about what to do after 52. It might just happen.
It might just happen. Oh, and also, if you listen to this on a service like Stitcher or Apple Podcasts, please do leave us 5 stars, thumbs up, or a review. And if you leave a review that makes me personally laugh out loud in my apartment when my husband is not home, I will read it on air. I absolutely will do this.
Yeah.
But it's on you. You have to leave the review. 5 stars, thumbs up, wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All right. I think that's it. But I feel like I'm looking at you at our webcam right now. And it looks like I'm using my journalism vision, and it seems like you have one more question for me.
So I did, actually. I had one final question.
Yeah.
And here it is. Are you ready?
How dare you? How dare you ask
I'm canceled.
This podcast is over.
Yeah, sorry. No more episode next week. No, actually, there will be an episode next week. Don't leave.
There will be an episode next week.
52 Pickup is an Aftermath production created by Gita Jackson and Alex Jaffe and edited by Esper Quim, with original music by John Aarons. The views and opinions expressed on this show are solely those of the show's personalities and do not reflect those of DC Entertainment or Warner Brothers. Please rate and review our show wherever you can and send your questions and comments to 52mailbag@gmail.com. Never stop reading comics.